There's no sugarcoating. Last night was just terrible. If you're a fan of the orange and black on a basketball court, it was a bad day. The Cowboys finally start getting some national respect, some love, some conversations of making the tournament, which we've been waiting to hear for years. And then we go to Tempe, Arizona, and just pee it all away.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are we feeling, our Big 12 brethren? Shout out to the regulators. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. The winter games are finally here, and there's no better way for you to follow them than to get a bet in with FanDuel, where you can play your game with FanDuel. Do not miss out on your opportunity. Just like the Cowboys missed out on an opportunity, the Cowgirls also missed out on an opportunity to climb back into that Big 12 title race. But here we are. The Cowboys, after this BYU disaster that has nationally caused Oklahoma State to be in the headlines for the wrong reasons, instead of benefiting from that game, the players fell apart in Arizona. But that's okay. They're the best team in the country. It's not a bad loss to lose to Arizona. Losing by 35 plus, yeah, that stings, but it's still, I don't know, not that bad. As long as you go to Tempe, Arizona, and you take care of the Arizona State Sun Devils, and instead we didn't do that. It was a sloppy, ugly, crappy game from the onset. It is disappointing that Steve Lutz didn't have his team more prepared. It is disappointing that we knew that if you beat BYU and you lose to Arizona, it's okay as long as you beat Arizona State. The fact that we were not prepared in any capacity for this ball game is problematic. That's the troublesome part. Like, I don't want to sit here and talk about us jumping off the ledge because we're never going to make the tournament again type of conversation. But this is concerning because Steve Lutz is an X's and O's kind of guy. Steve Lutz seemingly was wanting to follow that Eddie Sutton tree of discipline, of tenacity, work ethic, grit. We didn't really see that. Now, I will say the one benefit is the first handful of minutes of the game, we were at least, I don't know, athletically doing more defensively than we've done for most of the season. We seem to be trying harder. But in the process of trying harder, we put ourselves in some terrible positions. And shout out to Arizona State for finding a way to capitalize on our mistakes. This was a game where we just couldn't get out of our own way. Yeah, Anthony Roy did put up 16 points, but he disappeared in some of the biggest moments of the game. In order to be a tournament team, I think it's fair that you have a player that can put the team on its back in the last couple of minutes of a ball game to get you out of a precarious position. That seemingly has been Anthony Roy. And when it wasn't Anthony Roy, it was okay because it was going to be Victorious Miller. This ball game, neither of them showed up. Parsifala did chip in 16 points, much like Anthony Roy, but the missed shots were a problem. The over-committing on defense to leave wide open lanes, that was a problem. Defending the three has been a major issue. That was about the only thing in this game that may have been a little bit better than the remainder of the season. But it's becoming frustrating that you have the talent of the Anthony Roys, the Victorious Millers, the Parsifalas, the Christian Colemans of the world. You have the Kanye Clearys and the Jalen Currys that can change up the point guard position, and we still can't get out of our own way in a game that was a must-win. We didn't seem very engaged. We didn't seem dialed in. We didn't seem to have an understanding of what their game plan was going to be, which is pretty crazy because even their coach will tell you, we can't rebound for a hill of beans, but we will full court press you. We will try to put an emphasis on our 2-3 zone, causing matchup problems. We will do that stuff, but we're not going to rebound. There were so many instances where an offensive rebound or two would have been the difference. Now, we still out-rebounded them, but it's not saying much. We should have out-rebounded them. We should have outshot them. We should have hit more threes than them. We should have had more turnovers than them. It's just very discouraging knowing that you have the talent to be a tournament team. You have some of the national prognostications finally saying, okay, we've seen enough. Oklahoma State is a tournament team. They might be last four in, last four out, depending on what service you look at. But nonetheless, we're either right there on the doorstep or finally in the daggone thing, which we haven't been able to say since basically Cade Cunningham left and the NCAA decided to take the year after away from Mike Boynton. The Mike Boynton era, we would have some major wins against top 3 in the country, Kansas teams, and then we'd lose like 6 in a row. Steve Lutz now has put himself in a position where you kind of have to have one of those moments, right? You have to do what Mike Boynton did, which is get the huge wins, but then do what Mike Boynton couldn't do after that and get regular wins right after. And this was a regular win. This was a regular win against a regular team in the bottom half of the not very regular Big 12. So any Big 12 win is a big deal. And then we put out this performance. I haven't seen the Steve Lutz post-game press conference. Perhaps I should have watched it, but I was already pretty irritated enough that I didn't think I needed to see it, because that game was probably the most disappointing of the year, right next to that loss in Fort Worth against TCU. Those are probably the most frustrating, right? When you're winning 95-ish% of the ball game and then you let it falter at the very, very end. That is frustrating. But this game is frustrating because of the circumstances, because of that BYU dub being completely overshadowed by the other ridiculousness and the $50,000 fine that came with it. At least a win against Arizona State would have kind of made that BYU win make sense. But now it doesn't make sense. Now it looks like an outlier. Now it looks like a one-off. Now, heck, even BYU looks like a downtrodden basketball team because of that game. They're still a top 20 ball club. That is still a team that can make a run in the NCAAs. And instead of benefiting from that W, we have done nothing from that win. It has been the exact opposite of beneficial. It has done nothing but make things significantly worse on not only the team, the fan base, but the players now. They dropped this dud. And so we don't realize what could have been, right? Maybe if we win the BYU game and we don't have this off the court nonsense, then maybe we're much more competitive against Arizona. Maybe that was a distraction going into Arizona. But okay, you wash that away. It's the best team in the country. This Arizona State thing is unforgivable. What was forgivable about the TCU scenario is you have the opportunity to make up for it because they're about to come to Cowgirl. But instead of that being another win that puts us closer to the Big 12, or not the Big 12 tournament, the NCAA tournament, now we're going to have to pull off a miraculous win. Steve Lutz is going to have to dip into his bag of Mike Boynton tricks of pull a random upset against a top 10 team. Mike Boynton could do that. He couldn't do the other things that seemingly Steve Lutz is much better at. But instead of winning the games you're supposed to win and just being somewhat competent in the games that you're supposed to lose, we're a tournament team. But this definitely is a huge setback. You can't say that this loss takes us out of the NCAA tournament. It definitely doesn't. There's still, 6 games left before the Big 12 tournament, and we can make a run in the tournament. What's frustrating is Steve Lutz's inability to get this team to buy into whatever it is he's selling at this point in time in the season. Because whatever the salesmanship aspects were presented after the Arizona loss, they didn't resonate at all in that locker room. Seemingly nobody other than Parsa was willing to take that Arizona loss to heart and try to do something about it in that ball game. Imagine a game. Can we all envision one game together where Victorious Miller and Anthony Roy both drop almost 30 burgers? That's a dub. That's a dub against Arizona, Texas Tech, Tennessee. Doesn't matter. If Victorious and Anthony Roy are both approaching a 30 burger, that's a win. But it doesn't seem like they're on the same page on the same night ever. There's a night that we have to rely on Roy, and there's a night that we have to rely on Victorious. When are those two dudes going to come together and perform as a cohesive unit? Because if that does happen, this Cowboy team can be dangerous. If anybody has any reservations on Steve Lutz, I don't think it should necessarily be about the quality of the basketball team or the competency when it comes to acquisition of talent. I mean, we've already seen an uptick in recruiting. I mean, heck, Jalen Montanati just dropped 56 points last night, and he's not even a McDonald's All-American. So we've seen so many things improve. And the fact that we're even in this conversation, we're on the bubble, off the bubble, in the tournament, not in the tournament, whatever the case may be, it's a conversation we haven't been able to have for years. So if you have any reluctancy on Steve Lutz, it shouldn't maybe be about the basketball part. It should be about the galvanization of the locker room part. Because if there was a galvanizing moment of that roster, it should have been after the BYU, Arizona disasters that have kind of taken place. But our response was the opposite of positive. It was terrible. It was a terrible response. Now we've put ourselves behind the 8 ball. So now not only do we have to win the games that we're supposed to win, but now we have to go knock off a KU or a Houston or something to that effect, most likely, to put ourselves back into this conversation. That's the frustrating part. Tell you what also can be frustrating is hiring. So get rid of that frustration, because hiring is not just about finding a warm body to fill a spot. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want a candidate who is a match for exactly what you're looking for, Indeed Sponsored Jobs is the right move for you, because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post or into your building, Indeed helps you match with a quality candidate by boasting your job listing to the people that fit the specific criteria you're looking for. Whether it's life skills, certifications, location, they have all of it covered for you. If I were doing some hiring, I wouldn't just want someone who can help. I want someone with real experience who can jump right in and benefit my business instantaneously. And that's what you're going to love about Indeed. You can get specific and you can target exactly what you need. It's going to save time because you're spending less energy sorting through the mismatches. And with Sponsored Jobs, your post gets seen by qualified candidates who are actually a great fit. And here's the stat that says all of it. In the last minute I've been talking, companies like yours have made 27 hires off of Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you are hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all of the boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That is Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. But if you're hiring, do it the right way with Indeed, because Indeed you do need Indeed. Now we get to talk about the capitalization aspect of your pocketbook. FanDuel is the bee's knees for all of your betting needs. The Winter Games are officially here. And if you're anything like us, you're locking in for the events that you only get to see on the biggest stages every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel makes perfect sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about the most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected and in the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and then somehow get super intense at the end, speed skating races decided by inches, hockey games that feel different right from the opening face-off. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish for you. The Winter Games are here, and there's no better way for you to follow them than with FanDuel. Get with FanDuel today to capitalize, where you can play your game today with FanDuel. The Cowboys didn't get to have the only disappointment of the evening, as the Cowgirls fell uncharacteristically to the Lady Wildcats of Kansas State, who have no business beating Oklahoma State. This is two teams that had no business beating Oklahoma State. Arizona State for men, the Lady Wildcats for women. And that's maybe the most maddening part. Coming into the evening, my thought process was, you know what? No matter what happens, one of us will get a dub tonight. I don't think either will get a loss. But worst case scenario, Cowboys go 1-1. That is not what happened. I will say that fouls were pretty crazy. All right, there was 43 fouls in the men's game, 25 of those alone on the Cowboys. There's 38 fouls called in the women's game. At least it was a split a little bit more close to evenly. But, yeah, anytime we would make some buckets, they would answer. we never had the opportunity to establish runs. And then we had, people in foul trouble. So sparingly, we had to mix and match and rotate. But this is a barely 500 ball club that had no business beating us. So that is probably why I'm even more infuriated. It's because we both lost. And I would have said that there was maybe a 10% chance that would happen going into last night. And it stinks for the Cowgirls because they were, up until last night, only 2 games back from the Big 12 title race. Now this puts us in a very precarious position because you basically have to win out. And now you need Baylor to have a loss or two that isn't anticipated. And I just don't see it happening. So instead of chasing a Big 12 title, we've now put ourselves in a position where we're just looking for a top 3 or 4 seed to head into the Big 12 tournament. And that is extremely disappointing. We talk about the talent of Victorious Miller and Anthony Roy having the ability to put up 30 burgers. We have the same thing in basketball, but we're not seeing it. Talk about uncharacteristic moments. That was the most out-of-control game I've ever seen Staley Hurd. There was not a moment in her true freshman year where she was constantly dribbling with her head down, driving underneath the basket and looking up and being so far under the basket she had no shot. I've never seen that from Staley Hurd before. So there was a lot of uncharacteristic things that took place yesterday in basketball, which is why I say it's a bad day. It's a bad day if you rock the orange and black and you were excited about watching some hoops, because none of it went swimmingly. And yeah, the girls had a chance at a Big 12 title. It was an outside shot, but when you're only 2 games back from Baylor, you have an opportunity. And now not only did we strip ourselves of that opportunity, we put ourselves in a position, much like the men's team, where you now have to go take care of business. You got to go take on a top 20 Texas Tech, who's already gotten you at one point in time this year. Now you've got to get a top 20 dub to cancel out that ridiculous loss that we just experienced. Thankfully, they're good enough to do so. That's for sure. But not at shooting 25% from the 3-point line and only 40% from the floor. I mean, you got to give kudos to K-State defensively. They did a lot, but whether a Colacott getting in some troubles early and Staley Hurd missing uncharacteristic layups and getting ourselves in position uncharacteristically, it was just an off night for the Cowgirls. It was an off night for the Cowboys. Very disappointing for both to end up getting losses while both are chasing some pretty cool things. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? It's a loss. It's in the books. We got to move on. Shout out to Amari Whiting, who did put the team on her back for the most part of the second half. Matter of fact, there were stretches in the fourth quarter where it really felt like Amari Whiting was going to be the catalyst that got Oklahoma State ahead. I don't know about y'all, but I never once thought during this game we're going to lose. The halftime deficit, it wasn't bothersome. Third quarter deficit wasn't super bothersome. But the more the fourth quarter kept getting responses from K-State, anytime we would do something decent, it became frustrating. And even though Staley Hurd, took some uncharacteristic shots and put herself in some uncharacteristic positions underneath the basket, she was still able to chip in 12 points. Thankfully, again, unlike the men's, the Cowgirls beating a top 20 Texas Tech, it's definitely a possibility. I think we should be able to almost anticipate or expect it at this point in time, but it's not the same for the Cowboys, unfortunately. Right? With KU coming to Galgar-Iba soon, if we're banking on that being a W for us to get back in a contention, that's terrible. But we do get TCU, and that will at least take out some of the bad taste in our mouths, because we were beating TCU in Fort Worth. That was our game from a men's perspective the whole time, and we let it go at the very end. So now this is an opportunity at retribution for the Cowboys to get some get back, and the Cowgirls also to get some get back against the top 20 ball club that could change the complexity of the Big 12 tournament and how things are kind of situated.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Dawn Staley and South Carolina remain on top of the SEC standings after handing Tennessee their worst defeat in program history with a final score of 93-40. In the 43-point win, South Carolina shot 69% from the field. Tessa Johnson had a perfect shooting night, scoring 24 points, shooting 4 for 4 from the floor, including 2 threes, and made all 4 of her free throws. And UCLA remains undefeated in Big Ten play, topping Michigan 69-66 as Player of the Year contender Lauren Betts put up a double-double, scoring 16 points, collecting 16 rebounds, and adding 5 assists and 3 blocks. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Now we get to transition from Cowgirl basketball to Cowgirl softball, as they now have to be the savior of Oklahoma State with 2 massive top 20 SEC matchups as the Cowgirls get to take on number 17, Georgia, followed by number 10 in the country, LSU. This is a perfect way to right the wrongs that started the season. Losing to a top 15 Stanford to begin the year, 4-2, that's not bad, right? Then you get a couple big wins. You run rule Cal, you get a huge win over San Jose State, and then you get run ruled by Stanford. That might be a microcosm of the season. And, you know, it's okay to embrace that this is a little bit of a different team. We've gotten so spoiled over the last, 6, 7-ish years. The only concern was Bedlam. That was it. We didn't worry about losing to Texas. We didn't worry about losing to Tech or anybody else. It was only OU. And then we finally, get over that hump, and we beat OU, and it hasn't gone swimmingly since. This is a huge opportunity. But as Kenny Geisky said, this is going to resemble something comparable to my first year at the helm coaching the Cowgirls. Does that mean we're going to be a 500 team? I do not think so. But there's going to be some trials and tribulations. There's going to be some ups and some downs. And this is a perfect moment for that. If the Cowgirls can go take down 2 top 20 SEC teams, the Stanford losses, they kind of don't even matter. Even if you can win one of them, if you can beat a top 20 Georgia, top 10 LSU, that kind of cancels out whatever took place with Stanford. And to me, it does also accentuate the point that Kenny Geisky has been trying to make that, hey, this is not going to be like the last handful of years where we've dominated basically everybody not named OU. This is going to be different. We are going to have to scrap and claw and scrape our way to victories. So the response is what we're looking for here. After getting run ruled by Stanford in your last ball game, if you put up a viable performance against Georgia and LSU, then the outlook on the season can still be great. Are we going to catch Texas Tech or Arizona in the Big 12? Probably not. But a top 3 finish is a possibility. The pitching depth is going to be the biggest limitation, in my opinion, this season. But remember, the Sam Chow years. We rode Sam Chow. She was the first pitcher, the second pitcher, the DH, the 4-hole, the leadoff. She was all of it. Sam Chow was that girl. I don't know that we have a Sam Chow of this particular ball club, at least yet. But we're going to have to establish that. That is going to have to come to fruition for the Cowgirls to have a good season. And that might be in JL Austin. The Owasso, Oklahoma native has already been named the co-freshman of the week in the Big 12 to begin the season. After notching a hit in her first 3 contests, Austin was moved to the leadoff spot for OSU's remaining 2 games on the weekend, where she thrived. The Owasso, Oklahoma native became the 7th freshman in O-State history to hit a grand slam and the 3rd to do so in the opening weekend with her 4 RBI blast against Cal. She also put herself into the history books, compliments of OKState.com, by being the first home run hitter in Stanford's new softball stadium history. So perhaps JL is that Sam Chow character that we can lean on, but we've got to have it out of pitching. I think Katie could be a good candidate to have a massive year after being a pretty sparingly used piece this previous season. But Kyra Acock, for whatever reason, did not work out. So this is going to be a big year to see how this Cowgirl team responds. But we also have got to take it with a grain of, this is a young team with a lot of freshmen. Coach Kenny Askey's already told us this is not the team that was beating OU in Texas. This is not those squads. So we're going to have some patience with this year's softball team. We're used to winning 15, 16, 17 games in a row. We've gotten so used to it that this year and last year kind of feels like an outlier. But he's seemingly addressing some of the difficulties with this previous season. So we got to give him a little space, a little room to breathe to see how this thing shakes out. Because we need it. We need it to shake out. Last offseason was terrible. Okay? Women's basketball got bounced early after an up and down year. Men's basketball made the NIT, which was pretty cool, but it doesn't necessarily move the excitement needle. Baseball was pretty bad for the first time in a long time. Softball was just slightly above average, which was very, very weird for us to watch visibly. This offseason needs to be better. It has been better thus far. Again, I'm trying not to be too downtrodden, but dude, basketball's killing me right now. So softball, you get to be the savior and make up the difference for us. So go ahead and do that. Until then, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor. Hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike it if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe my podcast. And people out there, you're everything that makes this work. I appreciate what you do. Go do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave some reviews. Alrighty, y'all. Later, my taters.